this is Niswander, and welcome to the Nowman Show. Samuel Ronan is an immigrant, originally born in Germany. He then entered the U.S. Air Force, having completed 5 years of service stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and then in Little Rock, Arkansas. In 2015 and 2016, he ran for Congress as a progressive Democrat in the 1st District of Ohio. In 2017, he ran for the chair of the Democratic National Committee, otherwise known as the DNC, that was vacated by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. In 2018, he again is running for Congress in the 1st District, but this time as a Republican. My other guest is Rodolfo here in the studio. Rodolfo Cortes Barragan was born to working-class parents in Mexico. His family immigrated to a tiny rented room in Downey, California when Rodolfo was only 9 years old. He grew up with the same kinds of struggles and dreams as at least 86% of the Latino community in Los Angeles. He is running for U.S. Congress on the Green Party ticket in the 40th District where he still lives. And this is actually for a U.S. representative position, correct? And that representing the 40th District. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here tonight. First time Friday night, and we're live on YouTube and Facebook at the moment. So, Sam, you, of course, were running as a Democrat. For those following your story, we saw you on CNN. You're now a Republican. What's your strategy right now where you are in the campaign? Who are you reaching out to? Who are you talking to? What's on people's minds?
Well, the strategy has always been to reach people, to speak to people, and to relate to people, because that is the representation the most. And I'm trying to fight for a common cause platform. Weapons themselves aren't a danger. It's the person that's a danger. So if we apply the same principles, especially to law enforcement and federal agencies, all of a sudden, all these murders of innocent young black men and people of color should come to an end. And if not, those people that commit those murders will be tried and punished as the murderers they are. You know, and the same thing holds true with abortion. It's a medical procedure. It may or may not jive with your personal beliefs or your personal religious beliefs, but that doesn't mean you get the right to make a decision for another woman to do with her body and make her decision. So things like that surprisingly go over well, even in a staunchly conservative area, because when you take the personal out of it, the religion, that ethos out of it, and you just make it by the books, the black and white, people can understand. They may still disagree, but they respect you for it.
So basically, what you do is you bring it down to the personal level. It's more of a community type of and a personal issue with people. You know, what affects them directly, personally.
The point is not to say, my name is Samuel Ronan and I have all the answers and I'm better than you. It's, my name is Samuel Ronan. I'm running for Congress because, like you, I have to live in this country. I have to deal with its consequences. And I'm 28 years old and I'm going to be here for a while. And I would like to not live in a dystopian, post-capitalistic society just like you.
That's great, and it's interesting to try to how we have to communicate that with people. It's not always an easy thing to do. Rodolfo, I know that in your situation, in your district in South Central there's a family dynasty, right? So tell us a little bit about that and enlighten us on what you're experiencing there and what you hope to do in the process of your campaign.
Sure, absolutely. So again, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Yes, so the area where I am running, which is again California's 40th Congressional District, essentially southeast, a little bit of East LA. This is a region that has been heavily Democratic for a very long time. It started out with my opponent's father. Back in the 40s and 50s, he organized a lot of the community, which is overwhelmingly Mexican-American, Chicanx, Latinx, to become elected to the city council in LA, and then he went on to the U.S. House of Representatives for 30 years.
Wow.
Yes.
30 years?
30 years, yes.
Wow.
So he retired, and right after that, my opponent, his daughter, kind of took up the family tradition. She was previously in the assembly, the state assembly, and then yes, she took over the kind of the same seat, the same district. I mean, obviously it's shifted around a little bit over the decades, but it's just for essentially the same area, heavily Latino, Democratic area. So yeah, I mean, as far as I just came from there, from talking to people.
Wow.
It's a very I think, unique area of Los Angeles, especially in the United States, because the Democratic Party is definitely overwhelmingly represented.
Right.
So there are very few Republican voters, even fewer elected officials who are Republicans in local government. So at least in this area of the country, a lot of the problems can be directly attributed to what the Democratic Party has done at the local level.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's an interesting point that a lot of people don't think about, because if you have a crisis, and then a dynasty of decades,
yes.
Why would people think that you automatically at some point are just going to keep voting the same ways? That at some point that's going to change. Let's take a turn here. Let's combine a couple of issues together that really kind of go together, and talk about your views, starting with Sam. And again, this is going to be variable depending on the part of the country where you live in.
Right.
And I know how it is. I lived in Ohio. So we obviously have to have some more serious regulations of gun control. And we also need to look at our military-industrial complex and really take a serious look at this as a problem. And I think the vast majority of Americans, are already frustrated with Afghanistan and Iraq and what's happened, with the terrorist groups in Yemen and in Syria. We don't want more war, and yet it does seem like we're seeing signs of the drums for war being beaten again. First of all, the gun control issue, and then the military-industrial complex and the drums for war. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, where to even begin? I know you said to start with gun control, but it's not even that. From Ohio that in these rural and western states, guns are about as much a part of life as, cookouts, dinner, Sunday at the church. Guns are part of life here. Everybody that I work with has some sort of firearm. They either concealed carry or open carry at the workplace. I myself own a firearm, and I have a concealed carry. In fact, last month, I qualified with the M4 carbine. For me, a weapon is just that tool. It's no different than, this calculator or this cable to do my job with. It's a tool. So with the discussion of gun control specifically, we need to start talking about control, the actual well-regulated part of it. The weapon is irrelevant. You can have a bazooka. I mean, you could have a 50 caliber turret-mounted Humvee in your garage, and it wouldn't do a damn thing to nobody. Why? Because it's a tool. Until somebody gets behind it, loads it with ammunition, points it at something, and pulls that trigger, it is an inert, manufactured piece of equipment. The problem is the intent. People lack empathy and any sort of, what's the word I want to look for here? They do not value human life. And what we see is that the violence and the apathy is being directed at minority communities. I'm assuming in California, it's deliberately directed against the Hispanic, especially the Mexican community. And I don't say that to be negative. I'm just saying that because it's probably the case, correct, Rodolfo?
Yeah, oftentimes, right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you go to New York City, and it's the Islamic community and the black community. You go to Columbus, Ohio, Cincinnati, or Cleveland, again, it's the black and the Islamic community. And it's disgusting, because who are the people who are, in fact, shooting up schools? People with this skin color right here.
Yeah, that's right.
It's white men, young white men who have so much privilege, have every single opportunity in this country by default. They won the genetic lottery as far as the United States is concerned, and they're still the ones shooting up schools because... Why? I have no idea. I honestly have no idea what possesses these individuals to do that. But you know what does play a part? Warmongering. The sensationalization of having a firearm. This grand aggrandizement of what warfare is, of combat, being the good guy with a gun, of fighting the enemy. A lot of our homegrown terrorists, these men who have shot up schools, churches,
Yeah.
shopping malls, concerts, they think they are doing the right thing.
Yes,
They think they are
indeed.
because they are being radicalized by Fox News, by Republican conservative talking points. You have actual card-carrying, swastika-wearing, armband-toting, Hail Hitler saluting Nazis, like not neo-Nazis, people who actually say they are Nazis,
Yeah.
running for office unopposed on the Republican ticket. Okay?
Yes.
That is a problem. The KKK is surging in popularity, support, and numbers. The Aryan Brotherhood marched on American soil in broad daylight. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, and then you have people, normal Americans, defending free speech, saying that hate speech and the right for the KKK and Nazis to organize is protected. No, it's not. Let me be emphatically clear, and it ties into the Second Amendment and the warmongering. When you have people beating the drums of war who themselves were cowards and didn't fight in wars and are now sending others volunteer to go fight those wars, when you have people calling other nations terrorist organizations, nation states that breed terrorism, and then completely dehumanize that country down to one individual, Assad in this case for Syria, or whatever Islamic ISIS terrorist leader, and wherever they might be, you make it so that people can disassociate with the horrors that are actually being committed. I have friends in Israel, in the Middle East, who have to question whether or not they're going to see their mother, their father, their 8-year-old little brother, cousin, nephew, son, child, again. That might be the last time they ever see them.
Yeah.
Because these people are being slaughtered by us, by the French and English soldiers and all the allies that are over in the Middle East, right? So you add to that easy access to weapons, sensationalization of what owning a weapon is, sensationalizing warfare, encouraging citizens to enlist into the United States Air Force and other branches so that they can survive, so they can get an education, so they can get health care, by creating a normal civil society that is so destitute to the common citizen that they have to choose sacrificing their own livelihoods and freedom just to live a normal life. All of that compounds to the current state of dystopian affairs that we have. I mean, people want to say, oh, it's not that bad. This is Nazi Germany pre-World War II.
Oh, absolutely.
I say that as a German immigrant. I say that as someone who is dating a genocide survivor from Israel, whose grandfather from Germany was in Auschwitz, who was beaten, tortured, and watched his family be murdered before his very eyes. He had siblings that he could have otherwise grown up with who are dead, who are buried, who are nothing but ash and bone somewhere in Germany.
Yeah.
Telling us, telling the world that happening in the United States of America and the actions that are being prominent throughout the world right now are exactly the same exact things that happened prior to World War II, the rise of Nazis.
So, Rodolfo, what are your perceptions on gun control, and what are your thoughts on the military industrial complex and beating the drums of war right now?
So again, it's interesting to hear, Sam's perspective, and obviously I think the gun issue is such a relevant factor in Ohio elections. So I mean, I agree with everything Sam said, but it's interesting just to realize the fact that at least here in the area where I'm running, and I think probably perhaps in general LA County, the gun issue is not something that we debate that much about. In my experience, it's just such a heavily blue Democratic area, progressive. Some people out there calling themselves revolutionary, by which they mean, revolutionary ideas for the most part. So people are, I think there's a strong pacifist element, I think, around here. So yes, I can't even think of a single politician that has run around here even with a form a platform point about gun control or gun
yeah.
issues. I mean, gun control, yes, but protecting the Second Amendment, that's just not relevant.
Yeah, we don't.
It's not something we
don't
talk
really
about
hear
here.
that discussed
Yeah, it's just
here,
interesting. Yeah.
It's not considered an important issue. So.
But
I'm glad. I wanted to get your thoughts, I want to keep it moving so we cover as many issues as possible.
Sure.
Rodolfo, you, as a Green Party candidate, you're mostly focused on the Green New Deal.
Mm-hmm.
So share a little bit about that, if you would, because that is an incredible document.
Absolutely.
There's nothing else like it. Even, to be honest, Bernie Sanders' platform couldn't even really compare with that.
Right.
Give us your thoughts about how you base your platform personally on what's in the Green Party platform.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So yes, the Green New Deal is a set of policy priorities that the Green Party is generally proposing to pass in perhaps the next session of Congress. So just like the New Deal of the 1930s, the Green New Deal would put people to work. We need something that people are calling a federal jobs guarantee, meaning there's plenty of work to be done all around the United States. We need the federal government to step in and say, hey, we're going to fund you to do that work that needs to be done. So we also need a basic income to go with that, so that people are no longer falling through the cracks. So we have a system that works for everyone and makes sure that people can succeed no matter what happens in their individual situation. So tied to that, those are key things. But what do we establish? We establish a national system of healthcare. That gives jobs to nurses, to teachers, to professors, to so many people that are going to go through that process of educating themselves so they can help others. And then all the research that will go into curing these diseases. The government can direct a lot more funds to the National Science Foundation, for example, to fund cancer research.
That's right.
Instead of the $700 billion that we sent over to the Department of Defense, let's send it over to the National Science Foundation, to the National Institute of Mental Health, so that we can cure these illnesses that are just wreaking such havoc. So healthcare will be a huge component of it, and the environment, the green environment that we desperately need. So in my area of Los Angeles, we have a huge number of factories that are essentially causing cancer, birth defects. I mean, this is like, studies have been done on this.
Wow.
And,
they're using chemicals?
Yes, chemicals,
wow.
hexavalent chromium. It's just, it's horrible. It's a horrible situation. Children have so many brain cancers.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
in the communities. So it's just a horrific situation. So we need to turn from those kind of factories that are polluting the environment and hurting our health so much, to a green jobs, green technology. We know there are so many products that we can base around the green technology, so that we can have a healthier ecosystem, and that we can employ people in those good-paying jobs that will deliver a better positive environment for youth and for everyone else.
So before we transition into like a more environmental type of conversation, which links to Germany, Sam, so I know that I want to connect with you and get your thoughts on it as well, because they're way far ahead of us on that. I want to propose an idea, and I've already gotten some really good feedback on this. I think what we need is a Right to a Job Act or bill, and basically the first article would be everybody has a right to a job immediately to the Bill of Rights, or start creating the second Bill of Rights that FDR wanted to create, one of the two. The second article is an actual jobs program. That means because everyone has a right to a job, then that means the government, working with the private sector and whoever they can work with, must create jobs, millions of them. And people have to be willing to work 2 or 3 days a week, right? And if you work 2 or 3 days a week at these jobs that are created, that we can actually use, they could be, transitioning to solar and wind, whatever, get to that in a minute, then you can get a universal basic income for the rest of what you need, so that you can live comfortably, or at least get your basic necessities taken care of. You would have an option to work more if you want, and I think most people would, right? Most people would want to at least be productive, right? If not work additional days. Then the third article would be the government must provide the resources, services, just like Small Business Administration. I talked to Jill Stein about this actually, and she agreed with me that the Small Business Administration offers services, for small businesses. Well, why not expand on that, right? As well as those who want to create worker cooperatives and create incentives for people to come together as their own worker owners with worker cooperatives. And that would, in time, that would get more and more people back to work anyway. So what do you think about that kind of bill proposed? Now, I know it would cost trillions of dollars, but Sam, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so you're not on the wrong track. And I want to open it that way because what you're discussing is a post-capitalistic utopian society in which production exists because it needs to and not because of profit.
Yes.
And that is ideally where we need to be as a society, as a human race, as a human community. Now, that word specifically, I mean where we end borders, where we end countries, we end all this, that, and the other nonsense, and we become this entity. We're not there yet. We're not nowhere close. That's decades, centuries, probably millennia ahead of us, if we're not in World War III. That being said, there are things that we can do, and it's to your point about the universal basic income, a federal jobs guarantee, and then also providing the resources and social structures to offset living conditions, right? There's one of the proposals I have is a school to work pipeline, meaning you go to school for free, so long as that school, that education, whether it's a certificate or a bachelor's degree, is in a program that is in demand in your community, your state, your country, what have you. The state will then offer to pay your moving expenses and relocation expenses to get there. And it will guarantee that you have a job to wherever it is you're going to go when you have that degree. This prevents people from getting degrees that they can't find jobs with. Not to say that there are useless degrees. By all means, if 13th century French literature is your passion, go get that degree. But it's not likely to get you a job. That being said, maybe there are jobs, but not in Ohio or Arkansas, but maybe somewhere in California, Florida, or even help you to move to France, right? That's what the school to work pipeline will achieve, is allow you as an individual to pursue an education and a degree and a skill, and then find gainful employment thereafter. As far as the social constructs, that's very simply solved by universal health care. Now, Rodolfo mentioned the $700 billion to defense industry could be going to literally anything else, and I am 1,000% on board with that. First of all, the overhead cost of the military budget is already $70 billion just flat out. And then you add all of the increased overhead inflation. Like when a screw costs, 10 cents at Lowe's, but it's $2,000 for the Navy.
I know.
There's
or a hammer costs $500, something.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's between $100 and $200 billion of waste currently in existence in the defense budget. Now, would I still be okay with a $700 billion defense budget if that meant going to the troops, their families, modernizing equipment, modernizing all that stuff? Absolutely. But until that happens, it's waste and can go elsewhere. Now, universal education, depending on which research you look at, it's anywhere between $67 to $127 billion annually for every student that's currently enrolled. That's how much it costs them. There's $2 trillion and growing tuition debt. So first, forgive the debt outright, period.
Yep.
Done. End of story, if, ands, or buts.
It's $1.4 trillion right now.
Right. So the 67 to 100 something billion dollars, that's nothing. That's the overhead and defense budget spending. That's also how much is already being allocated in the federal budget for education assistance. So if you literally take that instead of supplementing it and making it actually the cost, you've already solved that problem. Secondly, that's what it was prior to the 70s or the 70s and prior, something like that. Education was pennies on the dollar. You could work a summer, a month, and then pay for it. That's where we should be going back. Same thing with healthcare. Prior to Nixon and that act that I can't think of right now, it was illegal to profit off of healthcare. We need to go back to that. Now, how do you pay for all this, right? Well, again, we already do. Literally, we already do. With Medicare and Medicaid, we cover the cost of operating expenses and thus healthcare in this country. Because the big argument is, well, how can you afford it? It's like, listen, insurance companies are the third-party vendor that we don't need to be paying in the first place.
Yes.
That account for over $2 trillion of waste or excess cost in the first place, on top of the fact that we need to pay out of pocket.
But Sam, not to cut you off, but what do you, in the 1930s, FDR, in order to implement the New Deal, determined that it was going to take a major tax hike on the richest people. Don't you think that that is going to have to happen if we're going to be able to solve some of these problems? I mean, I don't think. Do you think it's just going to be as simple as moving, being more efficient with the budget that we already have? I think the costs now are so astronomical that I don't know if we're going to be able to do that without raising the taxes, at least on the richest people.
So, as much as I'm not opposed, well, I'm sorry, Rodolfo, if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, Rodolfo, you want to jump in there?
Sure. So, yeah, this is always a difficult topic. Taxes, of course. What is the proper amounts of taxes? So I am trying to. So I am not an economist. I was trained in psychology. So I'm trying to learn from different sources, especially economics. So I noticed there's one particular economics professor who advised Bernie Sanders. Her name is Stephanie Kelton.
She's great.
Yeah, she's over at Stony Brook University. So she just she has a lot of scientific economics articles just arguing about how the federal functioning works, and her argument seems to be that just as taxes have not increased dramatically to pay for the wars, they wouldn't have to increase necessarily to fund these great programs that we're talking about. So this is the modern monetary theory that people are talking about.
So let's take a little bit of a break, and we'll do an extra little segment here to continue, but we are winding it down now. So thank you, guys, and I want to continue on the conversation here a little bit more to expand in the economic environmental issues. So this will be the rest of the television broadcast, but we'll continue. We'll do an extended little segment here. Thank you, Sam, so much for and Rodolfo for joining me on the Nowman Show. And until next time, be present always.
There's another poor man who lives down the street who doesn't have the money for new shoes on his feet. He works hard each day to earn his wage. It seems that life is a surrounding cage. And when I see the confusion all around us, I know that this is nothing. So you know it's out of order. Let's all try to put the pieces back together again.
And hello, this is Niswander. We're extra here on YouTube live, also still streaming live on Facebook. Of course, on YouTube, it's the Nowman Show on the Arroyo channel, and on Facebook, Dan Nowman. First time ever on Nowman Show. We've been doing live at the same time, and I have Samuel Ronan, of course, here in the studio with me, is Rodolfo Cortes Barragan, Samuel Ronan, who is on Skype. Both gentlemen are running for Congress. Samuel in the 1st District in Ohio, and Rodolfo in the 40th District of Los Angeles. Rodolfo, of course, as a Green Party candidate, Samuel Ronan in Ohio as a progressive Republican. And we're going to continue the conversation here, talking about economic policy and how we move forward, how we get people back to work, essentially. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it is that this is such a vast subject because it involves creating jobs in the community, which is why I think worker cooperatives is really important. But it also involves state and federal programs, right? That everybody, and then basically everybody's got to be on board. So let's continue you guys' thoughts on that, and then we'll transition into talking about the 3rd industrial revolution, and then we'll do closing comments. So. Rodolfo, you want to leave off where you left off, I should say?
Sure, yeah. So So we're talking about how we could possibly, say, pay for the policies under the Green New Deal, progressive policies that we think would help the country. So one perspective offered by Professor Stephanie Kelton, who advised Bernie Sanders on his economics team, is that simply we simply just do it. So Congress goes through a process of appropriations and authorization bills. So last year in November, they authorized $700 billion for the Department of Defense. They essentially willed that money into existence since we are a monetarily sovereign country. Unlike, say, the state of California, which constantly has to tax people in order to spend within its its jurisdiction. But the U.S. Congress, since it has this essentially money creating power, can essentially fund its way, can will its way through those funds. It's an interesting, this is I should say again, I'm not an economist, this is a perspective that is out there, and I encourage people to just read up on it, because I think it's very important to just read up on these economic theories from these esteemed professors. So.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely recommend Stephanie Kelton, by the way. She's awesome. Sam, obviously in your community, it's agricultural. There's a lot of agriculture. I mean, my Swiss grandparents were farmers. And so you mentioned on your website, you were talking about Monsanto and GMOs and cannabis. Why is that? Why are those such important issues to Ohioans?
Well, it answers the several questions about taxation, what's the proper form, the economy, and how to help agricultural and rural communities like mine in Ohio. Cannabis used to be this country's #1 cash crop, and it wasn't just cannabis to get high or hemp to make coats. I mean, it was literally used in feed for animals. It was in our clothes. It was in our paper. It was in our textiles. It was in everything. The
American flag. Wasn't Betsy Ross's American flag, man? It was made out of hemp, I think. Yeah.
Right. And on top of that, the original or some of the early Model T Ford vehicles were made out of hemp. So these have industrial uses. I mean, of course, nowadays we know about hempcrete, hemp plastic, hemp, all this other junk, right? The point is, if you grew hemp, especially in a poor rural community, the massive economic potential that you would generate just from that farmland would massively outpace the other crops that are being grown, which is unfortunate because we can't eat hemp to survive, although I guess that's debatable as well, but you need a little bit of diversity in our food.
Yeah.
Suffice to say, corn, beans, wheat, all that kind of stuff, that isn't nearly as profitable as hemp, but it can't be grown year-round like hemp, and hemp doesn't need to even be grown at the same quantity as those other crops to be profitable. And it can be grown year-round. So if you were to grow hemp in that rotation, so getting here a little bit, no pun intended. One year you're growing your corn in this section, and then the next one you grow it here, and then you put beans here, and so on and so forth. When you do that with hemp, you continuously revitalize the nutrients in the soil. So it's not only stimulating what's already there, you're profiting off of it, and it's essentially going to make you money no matter what you do with it, right? So for me and for this district, legalizing hemp especially is a massive windfall for especially the small farmers. There are too many signs on the side of the highway, dozens of acres for sale, 10,000 acres for sale.
Wow.
The corporate agricultural businesses just eating up these small businesses and these small farms that have been in families for generations. It's just, now, on that note, the small community local impact, we're talking about if this was nationwide, take Colorado, for example, look at any of the other states and cities that have legalized marijuana, just from the cannabis recreational use sales, they've generated massive amounts of revenue. We're talking in excess of $1.5 trillion in tax revenue.
Wow.
Not gross revenue,
And that's just for, are you talking about national economy or?
National.
Yeah.
So if all of the, and I came up with this, it's on the website, there's a big long spreadsheet, I love spreadsheets, it'll probably bore everybody else to tears. Suffice to say, if corn is grown at a 90% to 10%, 90% industrial, 10% human consumption, and you did the same thing for cannabis, 90% industrial, 10% recreational, and you did it on only 10% of the land, that is used to grow corn. That 10% of the land mass that's used to grow corn, 90% of that land being dedicated to hemp generates $1.5 trillion in annual tax revenue if those tax revenues are charged at 20% at the federal level.
That's
Now,
amazing. That's amazing.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things I wanted to get into too, as far as a huge industry, is obviously renewables and alternative energies to fossil fuels, and that's not the only major contributor to what's called climate change, or the increasing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. But we won't get into the other ones right now. But in Germany, they are already working on what Jeremy Rifkin calls the third industrial revolution. I don't know if you've heard about that, Sam. But Angela Merkel is actually on board with that. Currently, as of 2018, 32% of their energy is solar and wind generated. And they're on target with all the technology and everything to be 100% solar and wind by 2040. So the fact that when people say that we don't have the technologies, we don't have the abilities to do it, no, we just don't have the education and the resources delegated for that purpose. Because obviously, there's some people that believe that coal is clean. I grew up in Middle America. I saw soot on clean fallen snow in Ohio. So if anybody says clean coal, I automatically know they're out of their mind. There's just no way that even could exist. So what are your views? What should we as a country, and I know California is probably further along than the rest of the country is, but this is also an economic component that will turn the economy around. What are your thoughts on what do we do to get our country on board to a radical transition? And you know why Germany is in that radical transition? Because, and we have earth scientists here in Pasadena. I've had them on the show right here at this table. They have grossly underestimated the impact of the ice shelves breaking. So they've underestimated the levels of the sea level water rising, the impact that will have. So that has forced a lot of the communities that are involved in the third industrial revolution to radicalize their transition programs to solar and wind and that kind of thing. What can we do in this country to get people more focused on that and less on fossil fuel production? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So this is, of course, a component of the Green New Deal that we've talked about. We absolutely must learn from these other countries that are paving the way forward, like Germany. I know China has also implemented many energy creation instruments. They go down their roads, and as the cars go through the roads, then there's these tiles that generate electricity. So they're I think they're funding their scientists, their engineers to think of these new ideas. There's underwater turbines to generate. So we need to do that. We need to invest in our engineers. We need to send, like Sam was saying, this idea of the school to work pipeline. In Germany, for example, they have that very strong apprenticeship component to their education and apprenticeship schools.
All of Europe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we don't have that model here. I mean, we've sent students, tend either college or somewhere else, the military, whatever it is, but we don't have that that tradition of funneling young people into those kind of trajectories that we absolutely need. So here in LA, we need a lot more, for example, subway systems right now.
That's
like
right.
Berlin has an amazing subway system. Why can't Los Angeles?
And all of Europe does. I mean, it's just even in the rural areas. As I've talked to, I have a friend in Germany. There's so much access to public transportation everywhere. Mm-hmm. We're so far behind, and which connects to the earlier part of our conversation about all the $700 billion. People don't want to pay higher taxes. They don't want to reduce the military budget. But you can't ignore all these problems, mm-hmm. and the money has to come from somewhere. That's just the reality of the situation. So, Sam, what are your thoughts? I mean, your home country, where you're originally from, Germany, is so much further along. What can you bring to the table when you in your campaign and as you go forward?
Well, I try and bring all of the experience and knowledge I have. The issue is the United States is damn near a third world country in terms of what modern advancements do exist. Look at China. It has more high-speed rail than any other country in the world. You take Europe. You can get on a train in the most remote part of Portugal and end up in China.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a fact. It's a 3-day trip.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, you plan for that, but you can do it. You can get it. You can get on an airplane anywhere in Europe, and for under $100, not even €100, $100, end up in a foreign country. You can't even travel to a neighboring state on a 30-minute flight for under $100.
That's right.
Let alone the. So, when we compare the United States to Europe, it's just. Here's the thing. Let's just pretend for a second.
Let's give it about 30 seconds, and then we'll wrap it up. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's just pretend that the United States isn't full of corrupt, money-sucking, greedy sleazebags. We have the largest economy, bar none, in the world. The combined economy of the European Union doesn't even match ours. And we live in these dire straits. The money's already there. We don't need to search for it. We don't need to look for it. We don't need to turn over rocks and rub pennies together. We got it. And the only thing we're trying to do now is justify spending.
That's very true. Unfortunately, we're starting to run out of time, so let's do closing statements real quick, starting with Rodolfo.
Sure. So again, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah. So if people are interested in learning more about me, they can check out rodolfoforcongress.com, where I outline several of my biggest policy ideas that I'm trying to push forward. And so yes, I'm running in Southeast Los Angeles County, a very heavily Latino, impoverished, polluted area. So it's a great area to talk to people about the Green Party. So if anyone is watching, wants to volunteer, please let me know. Follow. There's a link on the site, and follow me on Facebook, Rodolfo for Congress. So.
RodolfoForCongress.com.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so great. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show. Sam.
Well, thanks for having me again, Rodolfo. It's always a pleasure to speak and be around with you. Good luck. Just because we're on opposing parties doesn't mean we're on the opposing team. And with that being said, that's really my ethos. That's my entire reason for doing this. It's not about parties. It's not about anything else. It's about representing the country and doing what's right for the vast majority of your countrymen. So that's what I'm doing. You can find me on www.ronanforcongress.com, Ronan the number 4 Progress on Twitter, and Ronan for Congress on Facebook. I look forward to your help. I look forward to your support. And in 2018, I look forward to making an absolute mess of the remaining congressmen that are in there.
Gentlemen, it is always a pleasure to speak with you and to get to know you better. And let's continue our conversation going forward, because we have a lot of work to do in 2018 and beyond. So thank you so much for coming on the Nowman Show. And this is Niswander. And in an era of a cooperative economy, we all need to work together to solve our problems and move the world into a future of genuine prosperity for everyone. What are you going to do going forward? This is Niswander. Stay present always.
The past is gone, the future is yet to come, it's now, right now. The present is here, the future is near, but it's right now. Being with you makes the party complete, so keep the body moving and show us your happy feet. At the end of the night, when all is said and done, I wanna know I did the right thing and had a